Today I will be working on a composition for piano in E minor. I will attempt to involve a little bit of music theory as well as composing. I have been working as a music teacher. I'm a music specialist for many years. In schools I've been a head of faculty, and when I work on composition exercises with students, I see that many are very, very skilled with lots of the modern sorts of software and technology, but not as confident with traditional notational styles. So this is more traditionally oriented. I do have the latest version of Musescore downloaded onto my laptop, but for some reason I prefer working with Musescore 3.6, and I find that it's less glitchy on my computer, and don't know why, but that's how it is on my laptop here. So let's get started. When you open up Musescore 3.6, I click on New Score. This is your interface that you get. I'll create a new score. I'm going to go in here, put my title in, Amazing Piece for Piano in E minor. Composer is myself. I've got some copyright in there. Continue. Now, if you know anything about composing, we don't usually just click treble clef or bass clef for keyboard. We need the great stave for keyboard because we need both treble and bass clef representing right and left hand. The key of E minor is affiliated with this key signature. If I toggle over that key signature, and in fact if you do it to any of these key signatures, you'll see that the two key signatures affiliated with the two keys or two tonalities that are affiliated with every key signature, they appear. So I've got G major, E minor. E minor is like a cousin to G major. They share the same key signature. It's just that when you use the E minor, when you use the minor version of the major scale key signature, you usually have to add in what we call accidentals, which is usually a sharp or a natural on the 7th degree of the scale, and I'll show you what I mean by that in a minute. Continue. This is a default setting. It's opting in for 32 bars. I usually use a lot more than that, but there we are. We're done. So we've got our template here. I'm going to go straight to it. I'm starting off with the E minor scale, and I'm entering some notes in with the keyboard, and I'll put the last note in with my mouse or trackpad. Because I can do one of two things. I can either make the screen bigger that way, or I can add in what's called a break. I might have to go into view the master palette, and I can put in a break, and then it's this symbol that I wish to use. I'm going to layer up the break onto that bar so I can spread it out, and that way you can control how many bars sit on each line of music. Sometimes it's important to do that because your texture gets very busy and thick, and it's easier for a pianist or a musician to read the chart that way. So let's have a little listen to this scale. Okay, now it's called E minor because of the 3rd degree, right? And the 3rd degree in every scale, and a scale, in case you don't know, is a series of 8 notes where we go from the bottom note to the equivalent top note, 8 notes above or even below. You could go in reverse if you want. I'm ascending here, I'm going up in pitch. Musicians can go down in pitch as well. I'll start with going up with pitch for the minute. So you've got E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D sharp, E. It's this 3rd degree that always tells us whether the tonality is major or minor. Alright, so because we've got a G there and we've got E, that's what we call a minor 3rd. You don't need to stress too much about your music theory here for the moment here, just to understand that this is a minor tonality. I'm then going to do something else. I'm going to add in 3rds above, just so you get a slightly richer picture of the harmony here. Let's have a listen to this. So that's setting some groundwork for some harmony. Then I will add in the third note and make triads. I'll explain a few things about our chords here. Okay, let's have a listen to this. In order to get out of the blue note, when a blue note's highlighted, if it's still highlighted, it's still in edit mode. So if you start clicking more notes up here, it might actually change the pitch of that. So in order to get out of it, you usually just click on escape on your keyboard trackpad or your keyboard, and that will help get you out of being highlighted. Now let's have a listen to this. These are basically the chords we'll be using in this piece today that I'm going to write. Now, a couple of things here. I'm going to add in what we call lyrics. So I'm on a MacBook here, so I've got Command plus L for lyrics, and I'm going to label these notes, these chords in a certain way, supertonic, and I'll explain to you what this means in a minute. Subdominant, dominant, submediate, leading note. I have to make that one word because it won't let me do two separate words there. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Because I've put lyrics in now, you can see that the spacing of the whole school's shifted a little bit, but that's all right. So let's talk about the relationship here. Most pop songs today focus on the first chord in the sequence, the fourth chord, and the fifth chord. And we have special names for these chords. We call them tonic, subdominant, dominant. If you study those terms there very carefully, you'll see immediately tonic and supertonic have a relationship to one another. Mediant, submediate have a relationship to one another. Subdominant and dominant have a relationship to one another. And leading note, it appears to be standalone, but it's actually very strongly related to the tonic, because the leading note always wants to lead into and resolve to the tonic note and the tonic chord. Right? So the bottom notes in every chord, that's your bass scale. And we call those bottom notes the root of each chord, the bass note of each chord. So I hope that's clear. I know I've assumed that people who come to a video like this have a degree of music theory knowledge to start with, but I'm just setting some groundwork for what I'm about to do in a minute. So tonic, subdominant and dominant chords in most songs make it a very harmonically strong kind of song. But where you start to shift chords around, if you're going from tonic to supertonic, if you're using mediant or leading note chords, the mediant and the leading note chords, especially in a minor key, don't tend to establish the tonality as strongly. You would want to use these chords a little less frequently throughout your piece of music. However, if your aim is to destabilize a sense of tonality, they could be great chords to play around with. So just depends on the way you hear things and what you're aspiring for in your composition. All right, so this is our basic scale. I've built some notes on top, which are basically our chords. I've provided the labeling that we use in music theory for each of these chord types, and I've indicated that tonic, subdominant and dominant are the strongest chords. Sometimes we branch over into supertonic or submediate a little bit. The next little bit that I'm going to do here is write a melody in E, and I just want to show you something before I start my own composition. I'm going to write a very simple melody that goes for 4 bars. Oops. So I'll change that into a quaver, back to a crotchet. that one into a crotchet. Okay. I'll play this melody in a minute. The reason I've got a reason for doing this. I'm going to just show you a couple of simple things here. In traditional ways of approaching melody writing, we have a way of approaching melody writing. So we usually say we start and we end on the tonic note, which in this case, the tonic note is actually the E. That's the key we're working with. That's our home center key. Right, the chord that's built on that tonic note, we call it the tonic chord. Okay, so you've got your tonic note. Okay, that's establishing your bass key. So I'm starting and ending on that note. Now you can technically end on any of the notes that belong to the tonic chord, which could be the E, G, or B. But for a strong ending, it's usually recommended you go back to the E, because that's your home center, your oral center. Now, I'll just remind you that this is very traditional way of approaching melodic writing. It's not the only way of doing it, okay? I have said to students in the past when they complain bitterly, oh, why do we have to learn all these rules? I just say to them, so that you master the rules so that later on you can learn how to break them. Okay, that's when you become a master, is to break the rules and break them in a very masterful kind of way. So you can see here, in traditional forms of melody writing, we try to keep everything singable with more steps, stepwise motion, and tiny little skips rather than big leaps. Good, so I'm going to go from here. Let's play from here. Good, and the other interesting thing about melody is that if you've got 4 bars, doesn't matter how long the melody is, your climax generally needs to arrive by about 3/4 of the way through the melody, right? These are generalized rules for traditional melodic writing. Now, I'm putting this in for a reason, and you'll see what that is, I hope, a little bit later. I'm now going to copy these bars. This is a great feature of Musescore. You can cut and paste, copy, delete, and I shall put them at the end. So we've got 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I put that in about there, that'll give me 1 bar. Oops. Control delete is how you get rid of the last bar. Fantastic. I'm now going to get rid of the break. So I've fixed the layout. Alright, so I may come back to some of these things that I've just done here a little bit later. Alright, now one other little thing that I want to explain about E minor is that, remember at the start of this presentation I explained that the E minor key shares its key signature, and your key signature is the sharps or flats that you put at the start of a piece of music. It shares it with the key of G major. Right? So every time you see that F sharp, it doesn't matter what F appears in the piece, whether it's that F or whether it's that F, it's always sharpened. You know it's not F natural. It's not the white key on the piano, it's actually the black key 1 step up to the right. So that's F sharp, that's F sharp. They're going to both be F sharps because that is a symbol showing that you've got to sharpen all the Fs in the piece, right? Now the unique feature about the Western harmonic minor scale is that the 7th degree is always sharpened, and we have to actually add the accidental in, right? So because I used the 7th degree there, 1, I'll count it from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's the 7th degree of the ascending scale, and the scale is the very first thing that I wrote out at the start of this presentation. The 7th degree is that D sharp, and because I've now put it in the context of a melody, it's got to be sharpened. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Right, that is an unusual feature to try and remember about writing music in minor keys, right, particularly if they're Western harmonic minor scales. Right, now I've already had a bit of a think about what I want to do for this piece, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm starting with quavers. Right, so escape. I'm going to select that bar, and because music is often built up on a lot of repetition, and because I actually am a considerably advanced pianist, I try to keep things I try to keep things when I write music in a very pianistic way. So all these notes can kind of fit under my hand, and I do have big hands for a woman, but they're piano hands, and so I know that my hands can stretch these distances. If you had a bit of a trouble or a problem reaching from E to A, then back up to E and B again, you'd have to just move your wrist a little bit from right to right, from left to right, in order to reach that top B and keep your wrist as relaxed as possible. But anyway, let's have a bit of a listen to this. The point is, I'm trying to keep it as pianistic as possible. So let's have a listen. Cool, so that's just sort of setting us up with a bit of an intro. I want to explain something here. It sounds very open and sparse, and there is a very specific reason for that. If you go from E down to B and you count all the notes in between, you go C, D, E, D, C, B. Going from E to B, that's 4 notes. You go back from B up to E again, that's 4 notes again, B, C, D, E. If you go from E up to this note, which is a B, E, F sharp's on the line, G's in the space, then you would have A on that little line and then B above it, that's 5 notes. When you start to use a lot of fourths and fifths in a composition, right, that starts to give a very open kind of effect to the song or to the piece of music, right, that you're trying to write here. So I'm going to put some big dramatic octaves in here, and I'm now going to give away the harmony by writing in the G natural. I'm going to indicate that yes, this is in fact a minor key. Now this last chord here, I actually want that to go down the octave. So I'm going to see if I can find my master palette again. I think is it under lines? I've got to remember where all these things are. Now because I had selected one of the notes before I went into the palette, because I'd selected one of the notes, it's automatically just put it in. But other times you can usually drag these features into the score as well. So let's just have a bit of a listen to this now from the start. Right, and then you get the impression that you're probably going to hear something similar in the next 4 bars, and that is probably what I'm going to do, is to cut and paste, do it again. But I'm feeling that the tempo's a little slow, so I might add in a tempo marking. In Musescore 3.6, it usually defaults to crotchet equals 80, so it will take that fairly slow now. And you sit there and you go, oh, I'm going to fall asleep listening to that, so I'm actually going to change it. I'm pretty certain if I put it at 130, it'll give me the kind of speed I'm looking for. Cool. Now, I can hear a melody that comes out in my head. That's the funny thing, I talk about this and call it the musical imagination. So I'll go B. Or below E, not the high one. Now I like this one, I'm going to repeat that one again. but I may end that melody a little bit differently. So you go bum ba 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 bum ba 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 bum bum ba 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 ba. Okay, so that's my melody for the minute. So let's go back to the start and have a listen to how this sounds. Cool, all right, we're going to have a bit of a play around with harmonising these things. All right, this is where we're going to get into some juicy theory work. Now, I have a thing with major seventh chords in the minor tonalities. So, into the left hand, I'm going to place oh, hang on, that might not be what I'm looking to do. I've got a feeling I'm not going to like this chord here, but we'll give it a go. Not bad. Works better than I thought it would. To my ear anyway. You might not like it, but that's okay. I'm just giving you some... I'm just showing you what I do when I compose music using Musescore, basically. I'll copy this one as well, but I'm going to change that last chord. Alright, now let's have a listen to this again. Alright, and so what I'm then going to do is take this melody, because one thing you can do to vary a melody is to put it up an octave. I'm going to put that up an octave, and I'm actually going to, I'll transpose it first. When I transpose, I usually go by interval, and in this case I'm going up, so I'll click interval, go up by perfect octave. When you see these terms like major, minor, diminished, augmented, that tells you something about the quality of the interval. When you see these perfect intervals, they were the intervals that I was describing before over here, like a fourth and a fifth. We call them perfect because they're open in acoustical properties, right? They just sound very perfect together. They don't provide a sense of warmth, right? They're quite neutral in sound. So I'm going to translate or transpose this up the octave. I'm going to keep these chords here, same for the minute, but I'm actually going to add in some extra chordal features as well. Now I've realised that when you want to add in notes to notes to melodic lines like this, if you want to do it the way I'm doing it, you've got to try and match the actual note value. So if I try to put a crotchet on top of that, it'll change it like that. It's gone from 2 quavers to a crotchet. So I undo it, I go back to that, and then I've got to actually pick a quaver to match that first note. And I'm just toying with a few things in my head here. Quaver, I'll need a quaver again. And I'm going to change this one a bit. and I'm going to do the run of thirds. And then a D sharp. Okay. So let's just have a listen from here. Cool, alright, so I've done that much. Let's have a listen to how this goes from the start. Cool. Alright, now, because I'm a muso, because I am inundating myself with musical things most days, I have what's called an inner ear or a musical imagination. So that's why once I start stimulating that inner ear, I can start to hear melodies. They come through, and in a sense, my inner life is telling me what to write next. So the way you build that skill up is just by immersing yourself in there. So if you sat for a day and you worked for several hours on a piece, eventually over time you'll start to get that ability. But of course you need the technical skills as well to be able to translate what you hear. If you hear a fantastic melody in your head, hum it and record it on your phone, and then maybe either get an app that you can find to transcribe it for you so you could potentially put it into a composition like this, or you could get a friend who's a muso to transcribe it for you as well. Okay, so I'm actually going to stop the video here. I didn't really want to go longer than about 20 minutes, but I've gone to nearly 30 minutes here. I've really just tried to set the stage in the video today with a little bit of commentary about E minor harmony, and it's we're dealing with the E harmonic minor scale, which is common to Western music, and I've explained a little bit of structure and the way about how we go about writing melodies. I don't think my grammar's going so well here. I think I need another sip of water. And I've also shown you how I approach composing piano. So I do hope that's useful to start with. I will make more videos and I will continue to create this piece as time goes by. So thanks for stopping by and listening today. I do really appreciate it. Thank you.